the research vessel Lake Char conducted a science expedition to Klondike Reef with a team of scientists from Purdue University, University of Wisconsin, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to study lake trout populations. It required 2 one-week expeditions during September to collect the lake trout samples. As leader of this expedition, I coordinate both the vessel operations and the science operations that are going to go on out at the reef. The Klondike expedition is part of the state's offshore lake trout research program, and Michigan has a presence with 4 of the Great Lakes and has a great investment in a fleet of vessels on the Great Lakes. Our purpose is to inventory the natural resources out at these offshore sites to support fishery guidelines. On day 1 of the expedition, the research vessel Lake Char traveled from Marquette to Klondike Reef, which was a 4-hour run to set gill nets to collect lake trout. So if you don't know what gill nets are, they're essentially like a tennis net that is deployed from a vessel and dropped on the bottom of the lake that capture fish. After we set gill nets at Klondike Reef, we headed towards Grand Marais, Michigan. It was another 2-hour run to Grand Marais, which was our forward operating point, and that's where we stayed for the week during this expedition.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm one of the captains on the DNR research vessel Lake Char up in Lake Superior. My role on the Klondike expedition here, I'm serving as primary captain. Primary captain on any given mission. You're pretty much doing most of the navigating of the vessel and doing some bottom mapping and trying to find good areas to set the net where you're likely to get what you're looking for.
I'm in charge of lines, keeping track of the equipment and the gear, setting nets, lifting nets, kind of in charge of what's going on the deck. You know, any maintenance that pops up while we're out there during the Klondike mission.
On day 2, we left Grand Marais around sunrise to Klondike to lift our gill nets, to collect samples. There are 4 forms of lake trout in Lake Superior. There's the lean lake trout, which is the most common form among the Great Lakes. There's also the Siskoeta deep water form, and then there's the humper and redfin, which very little is known about.
We think that actually there's an evolutionary change going on in these ecotypes right before our own eyes. And it would be really interesting to figure out, why do those differences persist, or will those differences persist?
The service is interested in this project especially because we are reestablishing a brood stock of these Klondike lake trout that are going to be used for stocking and rehabilitation in Lake Ontario. In Lake Superior, lake trout are fully rehabilitated. Learning more about what we have in Lake Superior would help inform rehabilitation efforts in the lower Great Lakes.
Half the team processed the fish and collected measurements and biological samples, while the research vessel Lake Char crew lifted the gill nets and picked the nets.
My role as a fisheries technician is to assist with what we consider the technical aspects of the project. That'd be things like deploying gear such as gill nets, aiding retrieving the gill nets, picking fish from the gill nets, and then reboxing them. Most of our research vessels have 2 technicians. We're not always on the vessel at the same time, but we basically do the same type of work, either on the vessel or back in our lab and office where we process samples, take care of data.
We'll go through all the equipment lists, we'll identify like the certain specialized equipment when we need, we'll prep that. We'll bring all the sampling materials, so if we need vials or plastic bags or knives or totes to keep fish alive, we'll make sure all that equipment's on the boat, or just simply, keeping everything organized and tidy so the people are safe when they're on the vessel.
We returned to Grand Marais near sunset and then processed our samples on shore. On day 3 was similar to day 2. We headed out to Klondike Reef around sunrise, except this time while we were out there, we were hoping to collect the lake trout forms that we didn't get in day 1. And while we were out there, we had to make some decisions on where to deploy nets in different areas of the reef to try to get more samples of the other forms. We headed back in to shore just like day 2, and we also had to process samples again pretty late into the evening.
My role in this project is looking at morphology. Morphology is just the study of physical differences and body shape and things like that in an organism. Try to paint a story of the life history of these organisms.
So we're taking photos of each lake trout. I just placed an envelope on there that designates each individual fish with its own individualized number. Sean is taking a length of each fish as well as its weight. He's using a fat meter, which tells us the relative amount of fat in the muscle of each fish. We're clipping a piece of each fish's fin for genetic analyses. Sean is cutting the fish open to assess the gender of the fish, what that fish has been eating lately, to extract otoliths, or what are also called ear stones. We can make cross sections of that and age the fish just like we would age a tree. Place it in the envelope with that individualized number so that once we estimate the age, we can go back and say fish number 8455 was, say, 25 years old. In any biological survey, we would be taking lengths, weights, looking at stomach content, collecting aging structures. So this is just a typical workup of a biological catch.
We're learning more and more through a lot of this research, and it's amazing because it's a unique system that we don't have anywhere else in North America, really.
The big thing is understanding these populations, specifically at places like Klondike Reef, which some of the information we can apply to other offshore locations, things like Standard Rock, Isle Royale, Big Reef, places where we don't know a lot about the fish, but the fish in areas like Klondike Reef might be similar to those areas. So what we learn by studying the fish here may help us better manage and understand the fish in those other offshore reef locations.
Day 4, we headed out of Grand Marais to Klondike Reef, as in the other days, in hopes of getting the rest of the samples we needed at Klondike Reef, and we did collect the remainder of the samples, and it was a success.
Some of the information we're learning out here are how many lake trout are in these areas, what types of lake trout, what ecotypes, so there are at least 4 different that we know of, so we can see how these populations exist out here, what the proportions are of each ecotype, how old they are, how fast they're growing, and whether or not these fish could withstand more fishing pressure than what they currently have.
It takes research to go find these to figure out what's actually going on.
The Great Lakes support large recreational and commercial fisheries that depend on lake trout. And so as we work to better understand populations, that helps us manage them better and make sure that we have populations well into the future.
The team did an outstanding job in successfully getting all the samples we needed. And we returned back to shore early, and the crew was pretty excited as they were tired from the long days we had on this expedition.